EAGLES, Eagles.
Good morning, Eagles fans. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday. July 2nd, dog days of summer are moving right along. Just 21 days until our Philadelphia Eagles report to training camp. 22 days until their practice. We are going to have it all reported on right here on Birds 365 with John McMullen. Johnny Mac, how you doing this morning? A good Tuesday to you, sir.
Yeah, almost 4th of July. Everybody gearing up. That feels like the last leg, Zander, before you get to the countdown to training camp. And so I hope everybody has a good extended weekend this weekend before, and then we're pretty much off and running with the countdown.
Yeah, man. We are right around the corner, just so everybody does know. And then for anybody watching the replay, we will only have one more edition of Birds 365 this week. So we'll go through Wednesday, and then we will have off July 4th and July 5th, and then we will return on Monday on July 8th. So just one more show left on the week on Birds 365 this week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll do this week, and then we'll have off Thursday and Friday. As Johnny Mac mentioned, I hope all of you guys have an amazing 4th of July. Have a great extended weekend. You get out in the sun, you grill. Johnny Mac, you got any grill plans this weekend for 4th of July?
Sorry, I popped on a little video there, but no, not yet. It depends. I'm a little under the weather, so
yeah.
hopefully, but nothing concrete yet, depending on how I'm feeling. The last thing you want to do is cook for people when you're sick. So
yeah.
So we'll see. To be determined.
Yeah, makes sense. Anyway, I hope everybody has a good 4th of July. As I mentioned, we'll have 2 more shows today. We have a good show planned. We're going to talk about some of the lists, man. Eagles seem to be getting, I don't know, maybe the league is not as high on this team as we are here in Philadelphia. I'll talk about that with Johnny Mac, see if he can knock some sense into us on that today. And then 8:20 this morning, we'll have Bill Colarulo, Big Bill, coming off their great discussion last week on Saquon Barkley, which was excellent. By the way, I went back and rewatched that whole segment. So that was good stuff from Johnny Mac and Big Bill. And then later on in hour number 2, we will talk some of these NFL lists, as I mentioned, and run them by Johnny Mac. And then we'll do defensive stats and think about who's going to have the biggest impact on defense this year. And we'll talk about some of that. So welcome in, everybody, this morning. Eduardo, James, Joe, Daz, what's going on? Cody, K, anybody I miss? CZ, I don't like missing anybody. They get upset with me, and I don't blame them. I'm giving everybody their credit. I want to get everybody that's here this morning for the live. Rashid, Sun Black, what's up, everybody? All you guys, Wolverine, appreciate all you guys being here. Johnny Mac, let's start real quick before I go to the Eagles list. I just want to get your perspective. I know it was maybe not a verified report, but just the drama in Dallas of they haven't signed CD, they haven't signed Micah, they haven't signed Dak yet. You're starting to hear some rumblings that CD wants his deal done. Again, I don't know if they were confirmed reports or not. A little bit of a sketchy source yesterday, but you did see it all over the place. Just your thoughts on that whole contract situation.
Well, I think, I think it's sort of going the way we thought it was going to go, and Justin Jefferson was eventually going to reset the market. He did. And now everybody's trying to fall into place, and CD Lamb certainly in that category. There are certain guys who typically, I always talk about contracts being, the next guy gets paid. We saw it at quarterback with Trevor Lawrence. There are certain guys, and Jefferson's that receiver. Nobody's going to go over him, at least in the immediate future. CD Lamb, Jamar Chase, those guys. But they're going to look to fit in right behind him in 32, 33. I forget what he got. I think he got 35. somewhere in that range. And CD certainly in that conversation, and that's obviously what he wants. I talked about the Cowboys all the time. It's hard to believe. You never know. We sit here and we follow the Eagles, and the Eagles tend to be proactive on these types of situations, but it takes two to tango, and CD Lamb might be, as I advocated, if I were the agents of AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, I'd say, guys, relax. The money will be there. Wait for Justin to sign, and then rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
That's what my recommendation would have been. And I guarantee that's what their agents' recommendations were. And, the Eagles have built this culture up to the point where guys want to be here and they're willing to take a little bit less, maybe to get that immediate security. And that's a good situation to be in. The Cowboys have gone about it a different way. They like to wait and wait and wait and wait. I don't know. You'd have to ask Jerry Jones. I mean, he's got a lot of money. To me, it doesn't make sense. If you could save some money, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you might as well. But he doesn't like to be proactive and he likes to wait. But ultimately, his history is he pays the players that he wants. And he pays a tax because of his inability to be proactive. But that generally is his history, and that's what I expect to happen with Dak Prescott, CD Lamb, Micah Parsons. Certainly, interestingly, with Lamb and Parsons, I would say 100% each. Ultimately, he's going to pay him. It's just a matter of the wrangling, how you get there. Dak's a little bit different only because you really got to seriously think, very good quarterback, but is he worth what he's going to command? And that's a very difficult situation to be in.
Well, yeah, because you got to wonder what's the other side.
Yeah, the other side. Well, that's the point, which
enough
people don't look at. It's like it's easy to say move on, he's not worth it. But then you're just screwed in quarterback purgatory. So, you're almost in that difficult position where it's, you got to make, do you want to go with a young guy? Do you want to get in a position to draft a young guy and take all those startup costs? Or do you want to be a relevant playoff contender? And a lot of fans will joke and say the Cowboys aren't a relative playoff contender. Well, they are. I mean, they're in the playoffs every year. They're disappointing. But so where do you want to be? Do you want to wait with that Andy Reid mentality? And, if you go back year after year after year, I'd say, one time things are going to fall in your direction. Or do you want to go in a different way? And I've been waiting for the college route. I've talked about that at the quarterback position. It's gotten so expensive. It's almost like college teams have to rebuild. It used to be every 4 years. Now it's every year because of the transfer portal. So, they're used to it. There's going to be churn at that position. And you go from quarterback to quarterback to quarterback. Maybe you get 2 years. If you're lucky, you get 3 years. Occasionally, you'll get 4 years with a good quarterback. But if he's really good, he's going to leave for the NFL draft. So, best case scenario, you're turning it over every 4 years. That's a rookie contract in the NFL. Are you going to keep churning and turning it over until you find the guy? Or, it's a very good quarterback that you're going to have to pay like he's great.
Yeah, tough situation for Dallas. I obviously know how you feel about Micah Parsons, and you just kind of gave us your rundown of your thoughts on Dak Prescott. How do you evaluate CD Lamb as a player? I mean, just like where he would rank in the – like someone asked me, do you think he's on A.J. Brown's level?
He's right. He's right. He's right there.
One notch below AJ. I have AJ as a top 3 receiver in the NFL, right there with the best of them. When he turns it on, he can be the best on any given day. I don't quite see that with CD. Maybe I'm being biased. You tell me. What do you think of CD Lamb as a player?
Yeah, I think he's very good. It's funny. I remember having these discussions when the Eagles traded for AJ Brown. At that point, I would have said that CD was better than AJ Brown. Now, ever since AJ got here with a better supporting cast, I now would say AJ's better, but you're picking, very close. I mean, they're both in the conversation to be top 5 receivers in the NFL. They both might be in the top 5.
Yeah.
The only guys I would say right off the bat that are better, unquestionably, are Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase. That's it. And then you could start, and you could argue both 4, 5, 6. There's some other guys that belong in there as well. It's a very deep position in the NFL. You see it every year now in the draft. The one thing you're going to have is good receivers, and because that's what happens now. I talked about the off season 7-on-7. All the only people that get to practice are quarterbacks and receivers and defensive backs.
Yeah.
So they've become so skilled. Boy, 10, 15 years ago, it was rare you found a really finished route runner coming out of college. Now you got the Devontae Smiths of the world.
You know what cracks me up, Johnny Mac, when I think about the Dallas Cowboys? I told this story yesterday on the National Football Show. I have 3 beautiful sisters. I have a mother. My 2 sisters are still in the area, obviously, but they are not sports fans. I did not grow up where my sisters and my mom are sports fans. They are
Good
not.
for them.
A lot of women are sports fans today. It's cool. We have a bunch of them in the chat. I appreciate all of them. My sisters are not those people. Recently, they have begun this Netflix show, and it's all about the Dallas Cowboys
Cheerleaders.
Yeah, and now I was talking to them all this weekend, and they come up with, I want to go to a Dallas Cowboys game. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, it's funny because it really does encapsulate the Dallas fan, though. They get a lot of the casual fans that love the hoopla,
yeah,
the jerseys and the outfits and all the things that Jerry does in the big, beautiful stadium. My mom's like, look at their stadium. It's so sick. I'm like,
their stadium is
man, that's
beautiful.
so true that really does embody the Dallas Cowboy fan. And I just thought that was a very funny story and a very funny glimpse into, where you get a lot of those Cowboys fans. And that's what Jerry's focused on more than I think he is about the player contracts. He wants to make that team worth $15 billion more than he wants to win a Super Bowl. At least that's what it seems to me. But we'll wait. We'll real quick. What are your receiver breakdown? I think I would have Jefferson. I would have Tyreek Hill, and then I would have AJ Brown. And then after that,
I go Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, and then
I think I would take AJ right over Jamar, but it's close. It's a pick 'em.
Yeah, and then I put AJ in the conversation, CD's in the conversation. Trying to think of who else I'd put in there. There's some young receivers that, Brandon Ayuk is in the conversation. Nico Collins is coming off a very good year, but he probably needs another year. Jalen Waddle just got paid. Miami's got great receivers. When you talk about duos, top duos, they're in the conversation with the Eagles. DJ Moore, if Caleb Williams ever gets good, look out.
I know they got a nasty roster.
Yeah, because DJ Moore is one of those guys that performs with bad quarterbacks, and when you're that successful with bad quarterbacks, that holds a lot of weight for me. I always talk about guys, special players are special no matter what.
Right.
I got to cover Chris Carter. People remember him here. He turned into a Hall of Famer. There was a stretch there where he just had pedestrian quarterback after pedestrian quarterback and just perform, no matter what. And that's really difficult for receivers because obviously you need somebody to get you the football. So I'm higher on DJ Moore than most. Devontae Adams is a guy who's been firmly.
Yeah.
And I should have mentioned Devontae Adams. Now, he didn't have a typical Devontae Adams year, but again, that's a disaster, Las Vegas. So he's phenomenal, Devontae Adams.
Do you think
And
he's
I
taking
still
a
think,
small step back? I mean, he's older now, right? He's got to be, what is he, like 32 now?
well, I
No,
think
he
it's
was.
more,
He was probably the best receiver in the league
yeah.
for a
You
good
talk about
5
route
years.
runners, boy, he is just,
He's
and he's
31.
31. I'm
Yeah.
just looking him up, but he's still got plenty of, I mean, we're talking about a bad season. I had to look it up because I knew it was bad for him, not for normal people. He had 103 receptions for 1,144 yards on that terrible Las Vegas team.
Yeah, and that's like
With
that's probably his worst season in the last 5 years.
oh, easily. I would. That's the guy I forgot. He would be firmly 4 for me. And then you probably talk about AJ number 5, and I would put him slightly ahead of CD number 6.
That's pretty
That's
good
how I would.
ranking there. Yeah. I could buy that. That's pretty good ranking there. I think maybe at this point of their career, obviously, I think I would take AJ over Devontae, but I do see what you're saying in terms of talent level. Devontae is one of the best receivers really the league has seen in a long time. Very talented player, especially when he was in Green Bay, man. He was
Man.
him
And they're all, and Jefferson and Devontae Adams specifically are such good route runners. I mean, it is absurd the separation they create. And that's what I'm talking about, guys coming into the NFL as good route runners. Didn't happen 10, 15 years ago. Now you got guys coming in, they're already finished products. You saw it here with DeMonte Smith. And he's gotten better and better and better. But he was a tremendous route runner the day he arrived. I remember seeing Devontae Adams for the first time. I told the story to Jody. After watching the Eagles struggle at wide receiver for years and years and years, the first time I saw this guy, it's like, oh, yeah, this is different. This is different than every other piece of direct that they were rolling out there.
right.
And that's, sort of almost every year now, guys come into the NFL. It's changed so dramatically. And you see these 7-on-7 camps that Zach McPherson recently had locally to me in South Jersey, where all these kids, last year I was there and there was a kid named Samaj Beals from Roman Catholic. He weighed about 140 pounds. So you knew he's a high school kid from the physical standpoint. But his arm, it's like, what? He had a better arm than Marcus Mariota. And they're developing these kids so early, and that's all they do. It's like the traveling baseball team.
I know it's a different level now with the modern world. It really has reached a different level.
Yeah. In your school and in Roman Catholic, I don't know. I'm not a big, for those in the Philadelphia area. I don't know. I don't pay that much attention to high school football because I don't have time to pay attention to high school football. And he's not a big time prospect. He's like 3-star or somewhere. And, but I know Alabama, it's the Zander school was snipping around him. Was that a Penn State thing? He's not even a top tier prospect. And I'm like wowed by the kid.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this? 160 pounds soaking wet. I gave him 100. He's probably a little bit back, but it's kind of amazing how advanced they are now at specific positions, specifically quarterback and wide receiver.
Yeah, shout out to Roman Catholic, right up the street from where I went to high school. I went to St. Joe's Prep, and I was there, John. I was there right between former Eagles now. DeAndre Swift was 1 grade below me. I was 1 above him, and then 1 above me was Alameda Zacchaeus.
So remember all the talk last year? We got to. I see Big Bill jumped in the green room, so we got to get to a break. But remember how excited people were for DeAndre Swift?
I do. I
was St. Joe's Prep. Oh, they're out, 1 and done. Boom.
He was a great dude behind the scenes, for what it's worth. I mean, great guy in high school.
Oh, they're both good guys.
Great guys. Yeah, really good guys.
Yeah.
Daz is giving us crap, Johnny Mac, because we got off on July 4th. This show needs to be.
I always say that. I always say that. That refers to the YouTube 360. We're not on 365. We're off on the weekends. anytime you want to see Eagle stuff, you go to the YouTube channel.
Yep, there's
And
clips.
it's
There's all
always
sorts.
there for you. That's what it refers to.
Daz, we appreciate you being here. Appreciate everybody being here, as you mentioned, Johnny Mac. Let's get to our commercial break. Bill Colarulo, Big Bill, coming up next. Stay tuned, everybody. Make sure you drop a like on the show this morning. Let's get up over 100 likes on the live stream already. 135 of you in here on YouTube and another 150 or so on our other social platforms. So we appreciate each and every one of you being here. Drop a like. Stay tuned. Big Bill Colarulo, coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365, a Tuesday edition, just 21 days out from the Eagles reporting to training camp. Joined now by Bill Colarulo from 97.5 The Fanatic. Big Bill, how you doing, brother? Good to have you on.
Good to be on. What's going on, gentlemen?
What's up, buddy? Whoa, repping the Sixers? Is that what we're doing there?
He had
Gotta be after the big couple of days the Sixers have had.
Yeah,
so
man.
you're more excited about it than I am, it seems.
How do you not be excited? Hey, this isn't Sixers 365, but
Yeah, we
like,
don't go that way.
it was the
That
best
time
thing
of
they
year.
could have done. Best thing they could have done, in my opinion.
That I agree with. 34 years old, but there's the best option for them. You gotta try, right?
Yeah.
So
I look at they're already in the chat asking me to get you angry today, John, like we did last week.
you know what's funny? Because I've gotten this reputation, and we got into it, and it's always fun to go back and forth. But Zander and I did a projected. It's funny. I expect more of Saquon Barkley than Zander, noted Eagles fan. I'm the Saquon Barkley hater because I try to temper the absurd people who think he's going to be the third receiver or anything. So Zander asked, and I'll let you say, Zander, how much all-purpose yardage, and I think Zander was at 1,200 rushing. What'd you say? 400,
300, 350 in the air.
Yeah. And I was at 1,300 rushing, 400 to 500 receiving. The guy who hates him, supposedly, even though I like him as a person, it's tough not to, expects more out of Saquon Barkley than noted Eagles fan Zander Krause, Bill Colarulo.
Yeah, see? So
Yeah.
you're misunderstood, John.
I am misunderstood.
Just misunderstood.
No, what's your projection for stat line? We did our offensive projections yesterday for stat lines. Just what do you think a Saquon might have?
So the interesting thing is you look at the numbers from last year. Swift had over 1,000, and Gainwell, I'm looking now, had 364. So you would think if they're combining for 1,400 yards, that Saquon's probably going to have 1,200. The only issue for me, though, is Jalen Hurts had a lot less rushing yards last year. So I think that's the X factor. How much does Kellen Moore rely on Jalen Hurts in the running game? But if I had to predict, I'm going to say 1,200. I think Saquon will have 1,200 rushing. Receiving yards, I know I said I want him to be a weapon out of the backfield, which I do. But to John's point, you don't want to take the ball necessarily out of the hands of AJ and Devontae. I'd be happy if he had 1,200 rushing, 350 receiving, put him down for a nice 1,500 yard.
Exactly what I had him at. I mean, that's what I feel as well.
And the haters got him above that. Because I think he's a very good player. I think he's going to have more of an impact on the running game. I go back 2 years. Miles had 1,269, I believe was the exact number. He should go above that. If he's healthy, everything depends on health. He's going to play more. You don't have Jason Kelce. Not everything's the same, but he's better than Miles. He should get above that number, I think, if he's healthy. And then the passing game, yeah. I mean, people forget, I think DeAndre Swift had 30-something receptions. Kenny was about 30. And they combined for, and that was a bad season. They combined for 400 to 500. And that's where I think they'll get Saquon too. So
yeah, 214 for Swift, 183 for Gainwell last year.
Yeah,
good memory on 2022. 1269 for Miles Sanders, but only 78 receiving yards for Miles.
Yeah, Miles really went off track as a receiver as the years went on. But yeah, I mean, my only thing with Saquon is the people that, don't worry about Paris Campbell. Don't worry about John Ross. He can be the slot receiver. Those are the people I'm like, come on, stop it. He might be in the slot like the Eagles used Hassan Reddick as a dropper in coverage, as a flat or hook defender. That's a curveball that you might see 4 or 5 times a game. If you have to do it more than that, you're in deep doo-doo. So that's the kind of people that I think are unrealistic when they're starting to think about, you don't have to worry about a third receiver. It'd be nice to get a third receiver for this offense, Bill.
It definitely would. I mean, Quez Watkins, we had heard for the last couple of seasons, but you don't see what he does to open up this offense. You don't see how his speed takes the top off the offense. It takes the top off the defense. I was so sick of hearing that because every time they called on Quez Watkins, he wouldn't come up in a big moment. You saw it consistently. The turnovers, the drop passes, and a stat I always like to go back to is his average yards per reception. If he was really this speed demon that was taking the lid off the defense, why did we see his yards per catch significantly drop every single season? He had that promising 2021 year before AJ got here where it's like, okay, maybe this kid can grow into something because he was a 5th or 6th rounder, John. I can't remember.
6th, yeah.
So from that perspective, as a 6th rounder, successful career. Most 6th round receivers don't grow into anything, so I'll give him that. But 2021, he averaged 15 yards per catch. Then AJ gets here. You knew his production would drop, but his yards per catch dropped to 10.7. Then last year in 9 games, it drops to 9.5. So it was just bothering me saying, if it's all about his speed, it's all about him taking the lid off the defense, shouldn't you see his yards per catch stay significantly higher? And then they get so desperate, you have to get Julio, who's just wasn't the same guy. He's not the Julio Jones he was.
No.
Falcons. But, yeah, I'm hoping – look, I really like Anais Smith, but, again, talking about a 6th-round rookie, Anais Smith was a 5th-round rookie. I'm not confident he's going to be able to produce. I'm hoping maybe it's Paris Campbell, because the argument I had for you last week talking about Saquon Barkley is look at who he's played with. Last year in New York, look who Paris Campbell played with. It's the reason his numbers were so terrible. Look, go back 2 years. Go back to Indianapolis, 63 catches, 600 yards. I'll take that. If we get that level of production from our third receiver.
Take that. But the thing about Paris Campbell, and remember, you're right about you're right about the supporting cast in with the Giants. It's not been good for the entirety of Saquon's career. But Paris was only there for 1 year, and he got benched with that group, which really tells you a lot, and it's not good. And then if you go back to his time in Indianapolis, remember, that's a high-level pick. Same year as J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. That was the whole thing. The Eagles were debating who to take, Paris Campbell or J.J., and Jeffrey Lurie turned them to J.J. Jeffrey doesn't want to hear that. But so he spent 4 years in Indianapolis, which was not a terrible supporting cast. In fact, when he first got there, it was a very good supporting cast. When Nick was there with Phillip Rivers, it was a tremendous supporting cast, a tremendous offense. And he did nothing for 3 seasons. He had 1 decent season, as you mentioned. And then he goes to New York, and he's got another bad season. So we're talking about a 5-year sample size, 4 bad seasons, and only 1 with a bad team.
You think that's a position they could upgrade?
Yeah.
Who would you bring in? Who would you go after, you think? Because there's a couple of guys available. I don't know. Michael Thomas is still available, right? But he's kind of a problem at times, personality-wise.
I think he's a little washed. I mean, Michael Thomas is, at one point, Michael Thomas was a big-time receiver.
I think that season, he was the best in the league when he got that big contract originally.
He set the record. I don't even know. The number was so absurd. It was in the 140s. I'd have to look it up. But
what about a name I keep seeing floated is Hunter Renfrow as a slot receiver?
It's interesting because I think the Eagles need a backup on the outside in case. I know you can't replace A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I understand that. Everybody should understand that. If you lose players like that, you're going to take a pretty significant hit. But I think you need to be a little bit better equipped. Forget about, you're screwed. Season-ending injury, you're screwed. But if somebody's got to miss a game or two, like AJ had to miss the playoff game in Tampa, you want somebody to be able to persevere at least over a short period of time. I've looked at Corey Davis, who retired and came back, but he's very young. To me, he's a perfect fit for an outside receiver backup. Remember, they brought in Devontae Parker to be that. And all of a sudden, Devontae Parker retires.
Because at the mandatory mini camps or the voluntary ones, when Devontae or AJ wasn't on the field, your starters were Joseph Nagata, right?
I mean, Nagata, got first team reps.
So you're right. That's a problem. And look, Hunter Renfrow's a guy who's mainly a slot receiver. So you're not going to expect
he's not going to play outside.
Yeah.
Now they did bring in John Ross, obviously, and that's a lottery ticket. If he's still young enough.
I see reports about Tyler Lockett. I don't know if they're ever going to. I don't know if they're going to move on from Tyler Lockett. He's still under contract in Seattle, but a guy like that would be great.
Yeah, I don't think you need a volume guy, but you need somebody who can. In fact, I know you don't need a volume guy, but
definitely don't. Yeah.
Speaking about Michael Thomas, that was So in 2019, he had 149 receptions, 149 receptions for 1,725 yards. Unbelievable season. He's never been the same since. So much. I think people don't put enough on the wear and tear NFL players take. 4 seasons since, he's had 40 catches. 2021, he didn't play at all due to injury. 2022, he played 3 games, 16 catches. 2023, he's played 10 games, 39 catches. Ever since that season, he's barely on the field. It's kind of pounding he took.
You got to go all the way back 5 years. You're right.
Yeah. It's the kind of pounding he took. I think in some ways, you're always thinking about, that's what the Eagles sort of, they were a little bit, hypocritical, I guess is the best word. They turned on a corner at running back. We all talked about with Saquon. They went away from their typical way of doing business. Now with Hassan, that's their typical way of doing business. They look at Hassan Reddick and they go, boy, we ran this guy into the ground. And he just turned 30. And he's playing this inordinate amount of snaps year after year after year after year. And they find the 26-year-old with the 25% pressure percentage and say, this guy's ready to break. And if they're right, it's going to work out really, really well. Obviously, if they're wrong, everything's about evaluation. But it's interesting because there's the typical Eagles way of doing business and the atypical way. The Reddick way was the typical way. The Barkley thing was atypical. It's interesting in the same offseason.
Yeah, and I hope they're right, because that's a big question mark on the defense. Can Bryce Huff give you the same level of production that you got from Reddick? Because Reddick's been the definition of consistency. 4 straight years with double-digit sacks. And like you mentioned, he played over close to 800 snaps both seasons here in Philadelphia. So you're asking a lot of Bryce Huff, who's never really done it. And now you need Nolan Smith to step up, who's never really done it. So, but maybe they're right. Look, you go back to, I remember the Joe Banner days. As soon as a player turned 30, they were usually out of here. They didn't. And the old cliche, John, it's always better to get rid of a player a year too early than a year too late. Right?
Yep. In the case of Hassan, if you go back to, and I'll look up the numbers if I can real quick, but if you go back to his time in his first year when he broke out with Arizona, which was his final year of Arizona. So you're talking about the 4 years that you're talking about, Bill, where he's been double-digit sacks, which is phenomenal. I mean, there's 2 guys in the NFL that have been able to be durable enough and productive enough to do that.
Yeah, I'm looking at his snap count now. So he played 862 last year, 817 the year before, 854 in Carolina, 874 his last year in Arizona, 688, 846. So that's a lot of snaps.
A lot.
A lot.
So what's that total number if you have it in front of him?
So including his rookie season where he played 445, he's played 5,386 snaps in his career.
Yeah, and I think Hupp is at 1,300.
And that's only in the regular season. You got to throw a little playoffs in there, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, his 2022 season here was one of the great defensive seasons in Eagles history, bottom line. I mean, and anybody. 19.5 sacks through the Super Bowl. He was phenomenal. 4th Defensive Player of the Year voting, I think, that year. But, man, they rode him into the ground. They rode him in, and I think that's what it's about more than anything else. They know what they did to him. And it's an ugly sport when it comes to stuff like that. When you make those types of decisions, you know what you've done to this player. And then you got to pay him $25 million. That's a difficult decision. And it's an ugly part of the game, but I think they made the right decision. I think that's going to be the best Eagles decision in the offseason. I think Bryce Hupp is going to be a really good pass rusher, and people are going to be really happy with that. And if I'm wrong, it's going to look really bad because Hassan is a proven player, and he's probably going to do well in the Jets. With the Jets, to your point, that's a very talented defense, Bill. But the thought of giving up a year early than a year late, they may have given up a year early, but they had to from the contract standpoint, and it may look bad for a year.
Yeah, especially with that Jets defense. They are a nasty defense. They have every level of that defense is stacked.
But 2-3 years down the road, I think you're going to say, oof, Eagles probably made the right decision.
Bill, a lot of lists coming out this week from NFL.com, from ESPN. What's your evaluation overall on the Eagles coming into the year? The ESPN Plus just did an article, 10th best starting 22. NFL.com left them off the top 10 of offense on their offensive list.
Yeah, that one
Indianapolis Colts at number 10. Just, are we overrating this team here locally, or what's your sense going into the season on how good this team can be?
That the offensive one throws me off because I think this offense has the capability of being a top 3 offense in the NFL. You look at all the weapons, and I've talked to you before on this show about I think the offensive line actually could be better this season. Now, there's some question marks there. Things need to fall their way, but you're moving Cam Jurgens to his natural position. He's not going to be Jason Kelce. No one ever will be, probably. But now you have him at his natural position, which means I think you're going to get hopefully better right guard play, whether it's Tyler Steen in year 2, whether it is Mekhi Becton transitioning there. But more importantly, you look at Mailata and Dickerson, those guys haven't hit their ceiling. So to John's point of the way the Eagles like to do business, there's a reason why they gave Mailata and Dickerson those big extensions, because they know those guys haven't hit their ceiling yet. I expect both of them to improve. So now if you have an offensive line that's even better than it was last season, and you have all of these weapons, what I think it comes down to is whoever's putting these rankings, maybe they don't have faith in Jalen Hurts, which I do. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a very good quarterback this season. I'm excited for Kellen Moore. So the offensive one, I think top 3. I do think some people, though, may be overranking the defense in this city because there are so many question marks across the board. The potential's there. The upside's there. I think the upside on this defense is a lot higher than what the upside was on last year's defense, especially in that secondary at the linebacker position. Maybe Devin White can turn his career around with Vic Fangio here in Philadelphia. Bryce Huff, maybe he can, getting a bigger role, turn into a really good player in this league. Nolan Smith in year 2. So I think there's upside. But right now, as we sit here July 2nd, it's hard for me to say that the defense is definitely going to be good. Offense, I think, definitely going to be top 5, potential to be top 3, hell, potential to be the best offense in the league, I think, with all the weapons they have and with that offensive line and with Jalen Hurts, hopefully getting a better offensive game plan from Kellen Moore. The defense, though, to go from 30th, how high can they get? That's my big question mark. I just don't know. We have to see it on the field.
Yeah, in a weird way, I think because of Vic Fangio's presence, I think there's more certainty with the defense, believe it or not, than the offense. I think the ceiling with the offense is much higher, obviously. And the ceiling with the offense is where I think you said, Bill, top 3 offense, maybe the best. The ceiling is they could be the best offense in the NFL because of the talent.
And Kellen's done that before, by the way, with the talent he had in Dallas.
Yep, best offense in the league that year.
Yeah.
But I do think I think some people are starting to catch on to some of the continuity issues, and when Jalen alludes to that, Jason Kelce, better offensive. I think people are going to be very happy with Cam Jurgens, but he's not going to be Jason Kelce.
No. He doesn't have to be, though, I don't think.
No, either do I. I think he's going to be very solid, but I'm just saying better offensive line, probably not. I think Cam played well. I think they got worse at 2 positions because there's no way Tyler Steen's going to play to the level of Cam Jurgens last year when he was out there. He did miss, I think, 5 games, but he played pretty well when he was out there and healthy.
See, that's where I disagree with you. I think you're going to get better right guard play this year than last year. Whether it's Steen, whether it's Mekhi Becton, I think the right guard will be better. And I think the left side of the line, as good as Mailata and Dickerson were last year, I think they're going to be better this year. So I don't necessarily agree that the right guard play is not going to be as good. I thought Cam Jurgens was up and down, John. I thought there were good games, there were bad games. The one game Steen did play was not that great.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
No.
I'm
expecting the right guard to be better this season, but we'll see what happens on the field.
Well, he would have my problem with the right guard position. You have 2 guys in the mix, and maybe even down the road, Matt Hennessy and Matt Sharping get involved. But those to me would be. I always go back to the Super Bowl season when they tried to start Isaac Seumalo. That's what they're trying to do. Isaac turned into a very good player, but people kind of forget young in early in his career wasn't great.
Yeah.
And he got benched. And then they went to the great Chance Warmack. And then they settled on Stephen Wisniewski. Was just a solid veteran. Wasn't going to wow you, but wasn't going to make a ton of mistakes. That's where I think they might go with Hennessy or Sharping. My problem with Steen and Becton, they're not guards. They're trying to make them guards. They're natural tackles. In the case of Becton, I don't even know. We'll see if they move him there. But I can say that Mekhi, Bill, he said it wasn't that big of a deal to him to go from left tackle to left guard when he was filling in for Landon Dickerson.
Yeah.
He said it was more difficult going from left tackle to right tackle because he's got that Andre Dillard thing going on. He's comfortable
so left tackle
with one
to right
side.
guard. Left tackle to right guard could be an issue.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, look, if the way I look at it too, I trust Jeff Stoutland. So the fact that Jeff Stoutland didn't say to Howie Roseman, at least it presumably didn't say to Howie Roseman, I need you to go out there and get me a right guard because Tyler Steen's not the answer. The fact that it appears that they have this job given to Tyler Steen, that's the way they set up the locker room. That's the way it was in minicamp. I'm trusting Jeff Stoutland that if he thinks Tyler Steen is ready, then Tyler Steen is ready. That's the way I'm looking at it, is another year in Stoutland University.
Well, they want, look, no doubt about it, but they did get a guard. They got a guard on June 3rd. Now, nobody cares about Max Sharping. Well, nobody knows Max Sharping, but he started 38 games in the NFL.
Well, you needed depth. I mean that they didn't go out and necessarily get a guy that Max Sharping starter, but is he really moving the needle? They don't have him slated.
Well, I don't think he's moving the needle. I think he's Stephen Wisniewski. I think that's what they're doing. He's a former second round pick, not former. I'm breaking my own rules, Zander. I apologize. It's a second round pick in 2019. He started 38 games. He was in Cincinnati's run to the Super Bowl. He was a starting guard. He's a competent player. And that to me kind of set off some alarm bells, actually, that they brought him in. I was like, that to me was an indication that, all right, they're a little concerned. I went the opposite way. They want Tyler Steen to win the job. Oh, they want him. But the fact that they brought him in June, that was a little bit of, I'm not going to overstate and panic, but that was a little bit of a concern for me. I mean, this guy's a starting level player, mediocre to below, and that probably being kind, below average starter, but a starter. That's what Stephen Wisniewski was.
So when you look at the line, yeah, clearly right guard's the X factor. Clearly right guard's the X factor. But to your point about the defense too, real quick, because I know we're up against it. Vic Fangio, I'm excited about him. I'm excited about Fangio, but to say that he's just going to come in here and now instantly the defense goes from 30 to top 10.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like middle of the road, 16, 17.
Well, what's crazy, John, is you look at his last 9 seasons as a defensive coordinator or a head coach, it's never been middle of the pack. It's been feast or famine. He's either bottom 20 or top 10. Like last year in Miami, they were 22nd overall. The year before, he didn't coach. He was here as a consultant. But in 2021 with Denver, they were 3rd. Then the year before, they were 25th. The year before that, top 10. The year before that, number 1 in Chicago, number 9 in Chicago. Then 24th, 20th. And then his last year in San Francisco, top 10. So it's like, it's either feast or famine with Vic Fangio. I got to hope and pray that he's able to get this defense going, because you can't go into the season like we did last year thinking that, well, the offense will be good enough that the defense isn't going to matter. It's okay that they let 2 linebackers walk. It's okay they let 2 safeties walk.
Well,
they're going to be fine.
If there's one thing you want to criticize Howie Roseman for, and I'll get on board with you, because I think generally Howie's easily top 5 GM in the conversation to be number 1 in the NFL. But he's taken it too far with linebacker. I say it all the time. He's taken it too far. I agree with his general philosophy, but man, I mean, you got to have somebody at some point. You just can't keep rolling in the reclamation projects, the coordinator. And when they went to the Super Bowl, they had really good linebacker play. Not great, not elite, but TJ was a really good player, even though people don't want to give him that credit because he was undrafted.
I loved him.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about rankings. So Pro Football Focus, who I don't always agree with, but Pro Football Focus put out their linebacker unit rankings heading into the season. Out of 32 teams, the Eagles are number 30. Not necessarily a surprise there, but the frustrating thing, guess who's sitting at the number 3?
They weren't 32.
Yeah. Guess who's number 3? The Chicago Bears with TJ Edwards right in the middle.
Yeah. TJ's, for people that watch this show, they know I've been talking about TJ for years. He remade his body. He had a bad day. He had a bad day when he was running, and he ran a 4.87, which is abysmal, and that's why he didn't get drafted. He was the runner-up for the Butkus Award at Wisconsin. Big-time school, big-time program, big-time player in college. He didn't test well. He got in shape. He remade his body, turned into a great player. I can't tell you how many times, Bill, he can't cover. He can't cover. You look at this PFF, he's top 10 coverage linebacker.
Yeah.
Like, one thing I will say about Eagles fans is they are very provincial. They don't pay attention to the rest of the league. There aren't a lot of linebackers in this league that can cover. That's why you're trying to get a Saquon Barkley on a wheel route, because he's going to be matched up against some linebackers flailing like a goop ball down the field. That's what you're trying to take advantage of. TJ Edwards was a very good coverage linebacker here.
And he didn't break the bank. He didn't break the bank in Chicago. I said it at the time, too. When they let Kazir White and Edwards walk, I was okay letting Kazir White walk. That one didn't bother me. But TJ Edwards the Eagles have not been good enough over the years of developing young, talented linebackers. And you finally did it. You finally got a guy in here that you developed, that turned into a very solid linebacker for your team, who didn't break the bank going to Chicago. And there was all the talk, well, he wanted to go home. He wanted to go home. And whether Clay Harbor was right or not, Clay Harbor reported last season that the Eagles never even made TJ an offer, that it wasn't that he wanted to go back to Chicago. Now, whether or not that's true or not, but I think they should have tried to keep TJ Edwards.
Yeah, because TJ said that, and I had mentioned TJ grew up a Bears fan, and I remember when he signed, well, maybe he just wanted to go home. I'm one of the ones who said that. I said maybe he just wanted to go home. I don't know if that's the case. And if the Eagles didn't make him an offer, and I don't know if they did or didn't, I've never gotten clarification on that, but if they didn't, that's abysmal. I mean, they should have I say it all the time, Bill, they should have took pride in, we found TJ Edwards. We developed TJ Edwards. He's turned into this player. They should have took pride in that. And now And I know you got to run. I apologize. At Bill Colarulo, make sure you follow Bill on X. Listen to him, 97.5. The Fanatic does a tremendous job. I saw you were on with our buddy Andrew DeCecco a bunch. So
yeah, we got a big announcement coming, me and Andrew DeCecco. So make sure you tune in tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 6 to 8:30. Me and Andrew are going to be on the air, and big announcement coming. So
all right, big announcement. So we'll be tuned in for that as Eagles season nears. But yeah, with TJ, it's like I'm surprised more people are okay with this linebacker situation. I'm very surprised how many people are. I am very concerned about this linebacker situation.
Yeah, same.
To the
Look,
point,
the upside's there. There's certainly a higher ceiling than last year.
I don't think the upside's there.
Well, if
That's
Devin White, look, there are a lot of ifs, John. If Devin White can show he was worthy of being drafted, what was it, 5th overall, 3rd overall?
5th overall, but
yeah.
And then
if Jacoby Dean can finally be the steal of the draft that we all thought he was, well, now the linebacking core could be pretty damn good if both those guys. But it's a big if. I'm with you. That's
the only thing going in my eyes for the linebacking group is what Johnny Mack said the other day. If somebody gets hurt, it's not a big drop off because they're all there's just a bunch of dudes in there, so it doesn't really matter. It's
what'll help, and I got to go, but what'll help this linebacker core immensely is if Jalen Carter turns into the beast we think he is at D tackle.
It's true.
I mean, that
makes
can
their life
certainly
a lot
help.
easier.
Not necessarily in coverage unless he's able to get that interior pressure, but he'll certainly make their life easy.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's Big Bill joining us, Bill Colarulo from 97.5 The Fanatic. Make sure you guys tune in to him tomorrow. Big announcement.
Right, big announcement.
Yeah, big announcement coming tomorrow night.
Bill, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate it.
Always fun, guys. I'll see you next week.
All right,
thanks, bud.
See ya.
There's Bill Colarulo joining us on.
By the way, I'm on Team Jacoby for linebacker. That's the upside. Jacoby finally staying healthy, finally turning the corner, finally getting better. I don't think there's much upside anywhere else.
I'm on Team Jacoby, but I just to be honest with everybody, my belief in the upside is dwindling, and it's dwindling fast.
That's fair.
I think it's in him. I'd love to see it, but I'm starting to lose all hope on Jacoby Dean. I hope he can be the player because we certainly need a better linebacking group. We need players at that position, and we really don't have it. I'm with you. It's the one thing Howie, I think, has gone too far on. And shit, we just talked about TJ Edwards. Is he the one that got away to Howie? Like, do you think Howie regrets that? Not if he didn't offer TJ?
I don't think he regrets it because I think he's devalued that position to such a degree.
I know,
and
but
I think that's my point. He's taken it too far.
I just think about the way Howie works a contract, though. I mean, TJ's making $7 million there. Knowing the way Howie would have worked it up, he would have been a $3 million cap hit, with dead cap years on the back, and it would have been cost him next to nothing to solidify your linebacking group. I just don't. I think Howie might be itching about that one. I really do.
Well, he hasn't shown it because of
course he can't show it. He doesn't want people.
Oh well, I mean, he paid. The Devin White contract was a joke when they reported it. It was like
$7.5 million.
It's not even close to that. If you look at it, obviously he's not paying Oren Burks anything. He's near the veteran minimum. He's not paying Zach Ball anything. His was also a joke. His is the veteran minimum. And I think they reported that originally at $3.5 million. It was really $1.125 million, which is the veteran minimum. And there's some incentives in there if he gets on the field, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But this is what you're talking. This is the core. And obviously Jacoby's on his rookie contract. So, as a 3rd round pick, he's not expensive. But this is what they're paying their linebackers. What does that tell you? What does that tell you?
It tells you that they don't give it.
Yes. There's no other way to look at it. And the only surprise about them being number 30 on that list that Bill
we've talked about
was we talked about it before, was that they weren't 32nd.
Who
Because
was Harry?
nobody has put less assets into the linebacker position than the Philadelphia Eagles. Nobody. And as Nick Sirianni will say, you know, you never want to be bottom 5 in anything in the NFL. Well, and I criticize Nick for being bottom 5 in motion. All right. Don't be bottom 5. Don't be bottom 5, Howie. Put something into the damn position.
Well, that's where the TJ, like, it's not like he got paid like Roquan Smith or like Patrick Queen. Like, he got paid a regular amount of money, $7 million or whatever it was. It's like, shoot, you could have just been competent at the price that you were probably comfortable going with. It wouldn't have changed any of your impact signings.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have changed how you had to build the roster.
The bizarre, and even the more bizarre part to me is so many Eagles fans think he wasn't good here. That's the most bizarre part.
Really? I've never heard that.
Oh, I get it all the time. He can't cover. He's slow. This,
where, on the
and that.
Twitterverse?
Well,
The
yeah,
cesspool of
social
Twitter?
media. Yeah, I mean, it is a cesspool.
Yeah,
That's where I get most of my feedback, though. Unfortunately, I hate Twitter. X.com.
We have a more knowledgeable fan base on YouTube than we do on Twitter. I know because JAKIB has presence on both. And I read all of our comments on YouTube after the fact, even like when not the live comments, just people afterwards who comment on our videos or on our post. There's definitely a lot of people on our chat that really are great football minds. I love a lot. James Carver, he's in here. I mean, we have a lot of good people that know what the hell they're talking about. I get what you're saying. There's a portion of people who are, you know, they just constantly looking for stuff, and they're the ones I think who live on Twitter the most. But I don't think we can blanket the fan base, you know, based on them.
No, well, I try to catch myself. I try not to blanket everyone, but there's, you know, since TJ took over, so we're talking about a 4-year sample size. If you're losing, so if you go back to 2020, which is the first year he played enough snaps to be graded by PFF, 19 out of 83 linebackers, 2021, 10 of 86. 2022, 6 of 81. And last season with a bad football team, 11 of 82. I mean, that's just solid, consistent football, you know. And the Eagles had him, and they found him, and they developed him. And this is where I am with Reed Blankenship. So many people say, well, you got to bring in Justin Simmons. You got to bring Eddie Jackson. Reed Blankenship played better than both of them last year. You know, does he need to stay on the field? Did he miss 3 games? Yes. He played better than both of them last year. I don't care that he was undrafted. He performed. He was one of the few players that performed at a consistent level on that crappy defense.
You know what bothers me about the linebacking position is that when you look at the competition of the Eagles, and when I say competition, I don't just mean the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Commanders. I mean the class of the NFC. They have great linebacking cores. Like the teams that are having success in the NFL, the 49ers, they have obviously tremendous. That game changed last year in the Super Bowl when Greenlaw went down. It completely changed the entire dynamic of the game when he went down. Now it was an injury that happened from him running on the field. But still, I mean, they have, you know, Fred Warner. They have even the Detroit. Isn't the Detroit linebacking crew pretty dang good?
No, that's one of my issues with Detroit.
They did take the guy in the first round, though, right?
Well, they took Jack Campbell in the first round. He didn't play. I mean, maybe he's got some upside. Obviously, he didn't play to where they wanted him to play. Alex Anzalone is their starting linebacker, and he's okay, but he's sort of mediocre. He plays the most snaps. Derek Barnes, and they certainly probably want Jack Campbell to stay together to take that step forward this year. But no surprise, he struggled really badly in coverage. But at least you have some upside with Jack Campbell. Again, we're talking upside here I'm talking about Nakobe Dean, and I still think Nakobe has some upside, but boy, the people hope betting on Devin White, man. Oof, I can't. That's just being a fan right there. I mean, you're ignoring everything he did in Tampa except for that playoff run.
Yeah, which was just too long ago. I mean, uh, look, I hope Devin White turns out, but I am definitely in wait and see mode with him. I am more optimistic on Nakobe Dean than I am on Devin White for sure. So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. I think you're overall right though that Howie has devalued the position too much, and you don't want to be bottom 5 like you said in anything, and he's certainly gone that route. So I hope he'll change it around at least and make a move. But is there anybody even out there to add? No, not really, right? I mean,
no, not at this stage. I mean, you can bring somebody in. That point of it's over. That point of getting a difference maker's over. Or at least somebody.
What's funny, John, is that like we have all now become so accustomed to devaluing the linebacker position, and I include beat reporters in this conversation. We hear of all these things. Oh, how he should sign coming into training camp. I hear more about signing a damn receiver when we have 2 of the top receivers in the NFL than I do about bolstering the linebacker position. I'm not saying we shouldn't add a receiver. All I'm saying is that nobody expects us to make a move for linebacker. Beat reporters, fans, nobody. They just don't expect it.
Well, and part of it is because we cover the Eagles. So we know they're not doing anything at linebacker.
That's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, we know they're not doing it.
So that factors into our thought system pretty significantly. But yeah, and speaking of my brethren, I mean, many of them are high on Devin White, and I'm like, man, I don't get it. I don't get it. Nice guy. I hope he plays well.
Zach Cunningham and Shaq Leonard are available, Johnny Mac. Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I still remember Jody building up Shaq Leonard like it was, they got to keep him away from Dallas. And, I don't know if you were producing at that point.
He did absolutely nothing.
I mean, I'm like, yeah, don't worry about Shaq Leonard. Come on. I mean, there's this presumption that because somebody was a good player, that he's always going to be a good player. And that's some of the same thing with Devin White. Devin White was a phenomenal college prospect. He never lived up to the billing. At some point, you got to give it up. And it's the exact opposite of what we started this conversation about TJ Edwards. At some point, yeah, he's undrafted. At some point, you got to look at what he does on the field.
100%.
It's the opposite with those guys. Shaq Leonard was a great player. Yeah, back surgery shouldn't have been on the field.
Didn't he sign that massive contract, Shaq Leonard, a little bit ago? Carver brings up a great point here, by the way. Sadly, the Cooper DeJean pick further showed how linebacker was not a priority. All 5 top linebackers are still on the board. Eagles opted to go with another defensive back. I'm not knocking the pick. I'm just showing that in a way it does highlight that they could care less about the linebacker position. You remember everybody wanted Edgerrin Cooper, the Texas A&M guy. There's a couple other ones out there. I mean, and then you talk about it all the time when they took Jalix Hunt. And they could have taken Peyton.
Yeah, I would have. That's where I would have taken Peyton.
Yeah, I mean, and he's wearing the green dot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and now he has a lot of injury concerns. So, he's probably the best linebacker in the draft if he had no issues. And he was sitting there late in the 3rd round. I forget where Wilson went. I'd have to look it up, but. Man, that would have been the perfect chance to get a potential somewhat, difference-making linebacker, but they don't care. They don't care. There's no other way to judge it than they don't care.
Has Devin White played 5 seasons now in the NFL? Yeah, right, because he played out the 5th-year option. They picked it up. Yeah, I mean, this is where I'm just like, I don't Scott says White is 26 years old. He's played 5 years, though, in the NFL, and he had 4 or 5 good games in his rookie year.
He had 3 great games in the playoff. And that's where it all, so much of it stems from that. It really does. It's bizarre. It's one of those things where it's bizarre. And I always say, and Bill mentioned PFF, and Jody and I used to talk about it. And you can, if you understand what PFF is trying to do, I think it's a very valuable tool if you understand the context of it.
Which I do.
But if you're looking at it just from a large perspective, as Nick Sirianni would say, a 30,000 foot view, if they say somebody's playing well, he's probably playing well. If they say somebody's a top 10 linebacker, probably playing well. If they say somebody's a bottom 10 linebacker, he's probably playing poorly. They graded 82 linebackers last year. Devin White was 80th. He was 82nd of 84 stopping the run. He was in 2022, he was 74th of 81 linebackers. In 2021, he was 79 of 86.
Oh my goodness gracious.
In 2022, he was 62 of 83. In 2019, his rookie season, where people think he was good, he was 68 of 90. I used to tell Jody all the time, it was one of the greatest anomalies I've ever seen in the NFL. In their run to the Super Bowl, he was unbelievable.
Yeah, and our fans are talking about it in the chat. White made crucial stops. And then, Scott answered back to me. The year Tampa won the Super Bowl, White was dominant. He was, Scott. He really was. But that was 2019. I mean, we can't just forget about the last 4 years.
And he was terrible during the regular season and played well in the postseason.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, he deserves all the credit in the world. But whether it's Nick Foles having a historic run to a Super Bowl here, whether it's Timmy Smith having the greatest Super Bowl of all time as a running back to that point, it doesn't mean they're good players over 17, 18 games. He had a good run. The vast majority of his 5 years have been a disaster. A disaster. Or I could lie to you.
And Green Bay, who didn't have a great linebacking core last year at all, they're the ones who drafted Edgerrin Cooper, so they at least are showing that they're trying to fix the position. Our buddy James Carver said, I think Wilson went a few picks before us. No, I think he went a couple picks after us. Is that right, Johnny Mac?
I believe so, but I have to look at I know Andy Weidel drafted.
I remembered him going like 2 or 3 picks after us because the Steelers were right there and they swooped him up right after us.
Yeah, I remember Andy Weidel drafted him. I'll look it up. He went 98th. The Eagles took
Jalen
94th.
94th,
And Peyton went 98th to Pittsburgh and Andy Weidel, which, told me something. Not that Andy's in control, but Howie, not the one valuing linebacker, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And look, he had some medical things, but I always talk with Pittsburgh, UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, one of the top in the country when it comes to sports doctors. Dr. James Bradley, one of the best in the business, even though you may hear some things about the Chris Maragos thing. WWE sends their people to UPMC to get medically cleared. When they clear somebody, it means something. If the Steelers cleared him, I don't have some. He also had some off-the-field issues from a personal standpoint, so a lot of it factors into it. But in the 3rd round, and here's the thing about Alex Hunt, like nobody talks about him. Because the assumption is we're going to put him off here. We're going to
that's what the whole thing around him has been, and that's what the expectation is.
Yeah. So you're redshirting somebody and saying maybe he turns into a player down the road. Maybe he's even a natural. Maybe he gets on the field because Vic will be like, screw you. I'll play him if he can play and rush the passer. But, maybe it works out great But if you're projecting the guy to redshirt, and you got a player that could be a day one starter at 94th overall, and Peyton Wilson could be a day one starter here, day one as a 3rd round pick. I guarantee he'd be the most talented linebacker they have. Guarantee you that.
I mean, SMD says, to use a 3rd for that. I mean, we used it for Jalix Hunt, SMD. He's going to sit on the bench. We're not even expecting the guy to hit the field. So I get what you're saying, but I'd rather do that and have the upside or have a player that can play than taking a guy that's going to, sit on the bench for 3 years, and that's the expectation. Scott hits back here, and I agree with Scott. He's like, I get it. I totally agree. I'm hoping, since he's still young, with the change of scenery and better coaching, he can resurrect. Scott, I have 2 responses. As a fan, I'm with you. All we can do is hope. As an analyst of the team and talking to a reporter and John McMullen, who's not here to be a fan, he's here to report on the team. Hope is not a strategy. So you got to criticize Howie Roseman for believing too much in hope and not addressing the needs of the position. So we'll see how it turns out. Linebacker.
And I'll say this about Tampa Bay. They got a pretty damn good defensive coach.
Yes, they do. Todd Bowles, who shut down our quarterback twice in the playoffs in the last 3 years.
So, and he got there in 2019, Todd Bowles, which is the exact year that Devin White got there. And by the way, Devin White loves Todd Bowles. Still, we talked to him about Todd Bowles. Loves him. And he benched him. He benched him not because he wanted to, because he had to. And that is a very good. If you're talking about, when people talk about best defensive coordinators, Vic's going to be in that conversation. Jim Schwartz is going to be in that conversation, former Eagles DC. Todd Bowles is also in that conversation. That's one of the best defensive coaches in football.
Yep, absolutely. SMD, you and I were saying the same thing. Sorry, I didn't interpret your comment correctly. That's where I'm with you. I would have taken Wilson over the project and Jalix Hunt. But let's get to our commercial break. Scott says that's alarming that Bowles benched him. It really is. I mean, that's where you might be an Eagle fan and you might be upset that John isn't high on the player. But John is his reasoning is founded in truth. I mean, the guy has been bad for 4 years. You heard the PFF rankings. And I know it's not everything, but if he was a top linebacker in the league, I can assure you he wouldn't be graded that low by them. So, you don't have to take it as gospel, but it is definitely alarming. Let's get to our commercial break. We'll come back. We'll talk about some defensive stats. Let's see what Johnny Mack thinks Bryce Huff could do, what Josh Sweat will do this year, even what Nolan Smith will do, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, some other guys we'll talk about. And then I also want to run by the top 10 22-man rosters, the starting 22s that ESPN Plus put out. They had the Eagles ranked 10th on that list. I thought we'd be a little higher, but I think that defense is weighing us down. So we'll do all that next. If you're in the chat, we appreciate you for being here. All the comments, great comments as always. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you drop a like on the shows. It's the best thing you can do to help us grow. And stay tuned. Birds 365. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your greenhouse? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up. And go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday, July 2nd edition of Birds 365. Dog days of summer are moving right along. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. I know we are in lull period for the NFL. There's not many of them in the year. They have mastered the calendar, but this is the 4 to 6 week period where not much goes on. So Johnny Mac and I are getting through the dog days. We are excited for training camp to roll around, get some new news to talk to you guys about, and report on this team for you guys all season long. Very excited to do it all year. It'll be my first year hosting as through a season. So very excited to do that with you all. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Just real quick before I go into our next topics, Johnny Mac, Rashid Mixon, thanks for the super chat, brother. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for watching today. He said, what was our linebackers ranking last year? Not enough. It was, I don't know exactly what it was. Johnny Mac, do you?
What were the Eagles? I can give you their individual ranking. Is it, if he's talking about PFF, I assume he's talking about, but I'll pull it up. Zach was okay. Nick Morrow was okay. Nick Morrow was kind of he was kind of a strange player. He had some big games. He had some really good games. When he was good, he was really good. When he was bad, he was really bad. That was his deal.
I remember the game he had 3 sacks, Nick Morrow.
Yeah. Zach Cunningham was 37th of 82. Devin, as I mentioned, was 80th. Shaquille Leonard, who was kind of a nothing. Most of that was in Indianapolis. He was 53rd. Oren Burks, as the backup in San Francisco, was 64th. Let me find Nick because he's on Buffalo now. Let's see. He was 36th. So, that's a hell of a lot better than 80th. That's what you're talking about. But because, the name, that's what the big name trap. If Joe Banner was here, he'd call it the big name trap.
You know what's funny to me about Devin White is, and I'm with you on the whole thing, by the way. I mean, you're making too much sense for me to ignore it. By the way, I would like to bring Zach Cunningham back if he's still out there as a depth piece. It wouldn't be a bad option if there's nobody else. But the funny thing to me about Devin White is linebackers don't get drafted 5th overall. Like, they just don't in the league. So he must have been his prospect was so high as a linebacker coming out of LSU. I mean, he went 5th overall. You just don't see that in the NFL, especially in the modern NFL, of a linebacker going that high. I don't have all the instances obviously off the top of my head, but and he has just fallen off the face of the earth basically in the last couple of years, and it's definitely an alarming thing. But I do want to move on.
Well, and the contract tells you, contracts don't tell you everything, but it tells you a lot when you talk
Especially
about
a guy was
somebody.
5th overall.
Yeah. Again, Todd Bowles, and I looked it up in the break. I got the exact quote. He was a father figure to me, still is to this day, and he checks in on me. That's what he said about Todd Bowles. So he doesn't hate Todd Bowles. And Todd had said he probably needs a change of scenery. So that was the question that was asked. He said, I don't know if I needed a change of scenery, but I feel it was definitely good, a breath of fresh air to be able to start over, work my way from the ground up. There's nothing like a life humbling experience. And I feel like what I went through last year was very humbling for me. So all of that is good. Maybe it kickstarts something. Who knows? But, that's a guy who always had my back. That's what he said about Todd Bowles. So if he said that, then I really agree because he knows best. He was a father figure to me still to this day and checks in on me. Todd Bowles did everything possible to get Devin White to where he was supposed to be as a prospect. Maybe it's a wake-up call, but again, hope it's not a strategy, as he said, Zander.
Yeah. So let's move on, Johnny Mac. Before I do the defensive stat projections, obviously it won't be as deep as the offense. A little bit different the way stats work on defense, as we know, especially with guys like Jordan Davis. But what do you make of the ESPN ranking of having us at 10 on the overall roster? You're an objective person, an objective reporter of this team. You don't wear eagle-colored glasses like I happen to sometimes. How would you rank this starting 22 coming into it? Because we talked about the depth being a problem, but dang, our starting 22 is pretty good. But how do you see it?
Well, I think it's the opposite. I think, if you look at starting 22, I'm probably going to put the Eagles higher than if I'm looking at the whole roster.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think there's some pretty significant depth issues. I don't think I've already said that. I think they're on the cusp of top 5. I don't think it's a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination. I think in the NFC, right off the bat, Detroit and San Francisco are probably ahead of them. So I think there's a lot. I think maybe the national people are catching up to some of the flaws. We just talked extensively about one of them.
Yeah.
They're arguably the worst linebacker situation in the league. They're going to be relying on a lot of young players. And Darius Slay was on Chris Long's podcast talking about what went wrong with the communication. I've been talking about it since we started this show.
Yeah.
When Vic Fangio's defense fails, it's because of communication on the back end. Bill Colarulo was talking about it's either feast or famine. It's famine when there's no communication on the back end. That's when the famine comes. Now you're expecting young guys, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, might be Isaiah Rodgers who just got here, might be Kaylee Ringo, still very young. Whatever. You're expecting young guys to have no hiccups in one of the more complicated defenses from a coverage standpoint. The continuity part of the offense is real. You've already heard the quarterback talk about it. It seems like he's getting a little sick of it. I don't know if he's on board. I think it's all been hyper-focused on, Jalen's upset at Nick Sirianni. Jalen doesn't like Nick Sirianni. Jalen didn't like that offense. I think it's maybe Jalen liked that offense, and he's pissed that he's got to change from that offense. That's what I think. So, to me, the biggest story of the year is going to be how Jalen Hurts meshes with Kellen Moore. If it's good, it's going to be great. But if it's bad, maybe it's going to be worse than anybody expected.
Biggest stories, Kellen and Jalen. Would your second biggest thing be the communication there on defense and how that works? Because it really could determine how good Vic's able to make this defense.
Well, it's always a big deal. Like I said, I mean, if you go back to as good as they were in 2022, people don't think they were good because they flubbed communication in the Super Bowl. I mean, you could be good, number one in the NFL in pass defense, good. Then bang, blown coverage, you lose the Super Bowl.
Right.
It's just part of this defense, you know. It's, part of being that complicated. So yeah, it's always a big thing with this defense. And young players tend to have more problems than veteran players who've done it a lot. So, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't have hiccups and get better and better as the season goes on. I think that's what you should be hoping for. You're going to have some hiccups early. And then hopefully you get better and better. And second half of the season comes, and it's the opposite of last year when you played your best football early. Maybe you're playing your best football late when it matters.
Yep, agreed, Johnny Mac. Let's get into the stat things that we think for each defensive player. Let's just start with that front. Let's start with the two that everybody's got the onus on that could potentially make or break this defense this year to some extent. We'll start with Jalen Carter, second-year player out of Georgia. Obviously had a big rookie year, fell off a little bit toward the end when Patricia came in. But by all means, he was on his way to being the defensive rookie of the year. After the drop-off, he lost out to Will Anderson on the Texans. What do you make of Jalen Carter coming into the year, and what type of stats and numbers you think he can put up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Jalen Carter guy. He's going to be in the conversation to be the most talented Eagle, and he might be the most talented Eagle, pure football player. Can he translate that into being the best pure Eagles football player? I think he can. I think he should have been the defensive rookie of the year last year, even with the drop-off late. I still think his overall standard of play was better than Will Anderson's.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where it's like a "what have you done for me lately?" and everybody just forgot how
just
good
the way
he
it is.
Yeah,
There's always a recency bias. But you talk about, I mean, this guy was it's a big PFF day. Rookie player. The only defensive tackles rated above Jalen Carter in the NFL last season were Dexter Lawrence, the Giants' best player. Saquon
who's a tremendous tackle.
Yeah. Aaron Donald, Quinnen Williams from the Jets, who's phenomenal.
Yep.
Eric Brown from Carolina, who you might not know, but he's phenomenal. And Chris Jones, who everybody knows.
Yep.
In Kansas City. That's it. And then there's Jalen Carter. That's how good he was as a rookie. And he's got to play more. Conditioning issues, Georgia, we talk about it all the time. He played 599 snaps. He's got to get that up into the 700-800 range. And if you want to get to the Chris Jones category, 947, you want him on the field as much as possible.
Is that how many snaps Chris Jones played last year? That is unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's where Fletcher used to be, and that's where you want, maybe not quite that high, but you want him up in that 700-800 range easily, and even more if he can do it. But, Chris Jones is number one. That's tough, but there's a bunch of guys. Aaron Donald played 916. He's obviously Williams played 778. So you're more in that category, 778. Can he get to 778? That's going to be a big story with Jalen Carter. But as far as his skill, his talent, it's off the charts. He might be one of those guys where other teams are saying, well, we can't block him. So, in the case of an interior player, sometimes you use that against him. Sometimes you let him go up the field, try to trap behind him, things like that. But yeah, opposing teams are going to game plan to stop Jalen Carter. He's the guy that they're going to game plan for.
Let's talk stats. Johnny Mack last year, he had 6 sacks. You think he's a 10-sack type of player? I know it's tough because this is different to me doing stats for defensive guys. Like they impact the games in different ways that don't always show up on the score sheet. But just for the sake of the exercise, what kind of stats do you think Jalen Carter will put up this year? I will read you his stat line from last year. He had 23 or 33 total tackles, 20 solo, 13 assisted, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery. What do you think Jalen Carter will put up this year?
I wish you had his pressure percentage.
Yeah, I don't have that. I'm not a PFF.
Maybe I can look that up, but yeah, I think he's going to be a double-digit sack guy at some point. So I, wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, that's one of those. Anybody who's watched this show, I give a shit about sacks because so many are based on other things. But the great ones like Aaron Donald are going to be there consistently because they get so much pressure. But he's going to be really good. Tackles are meaningless
at that position for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he's just really good. And I hate to say it, I know people like stats, but it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, especially
if his pressure percentage is 20% or more, that's what you want. That's what you want.
Yeah, let's go Jordan Davis now, Johnny Mack. Somebody who's coming into his 3rd year, a misunderstood player by a lot of people, as we've talked about here on Birds 365. What's your expectations for Jordan Davis coming into the year? Last year, I thought he had a better year. Just to give you the stat line, I know as we mentioned, he's definitely one where the stats don't tell the full story. 45 total tackles, 18 solo, 2.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. I don't know if everybody's going to understand that because he is not the type of player that puts up stats, really. He's an impact player on the game, but it's tough to quantify in numbers. What do you expect? What do you expect for Jordan Davis this year coming into this season?
Yeah, I think that it's I don't want to be pigeonholed to numbers because they don't matter.
Yeah, well, don't forget the numbers then. Just your expectation on the type of impact.
I mean, I've been talking about Jordan Davis for years, and people were going to be from the day he got drafted. I said, if people are expecting sacks, they're going to be disappointed. That's not his job. That's not his role. His role is to tie up blockers and make it easier for others to make plays or make it easier for others to get to the quarterback. Whether it's keeping in the running game, keeping guys off the off-ball linebackers where the Eagles have a weakness. So obviously he's going to be very important to that. Or in the pass rush, again, tying up 2 guys maybe so Jalen Carter has a one-on-one, which teams never want because they're going to be sliding protection to Jalen Carter. So, I mean, Jordan Davis is one of the most underrated players in football because people think he's bad. Now, there are issues. He needs to get better. Conditioning, as we said. It would be nice if he could develop to play more in 4-man fronts instead of just being a 50 front guy. And get more.
I think he's going to, honestly. And when you talk about that, just from his raw athleticism, like he's crazy fast for his size. And he does kind of have some of those things that the more he plays, I think he'll become more of an impact in the 4-man front. Maybe not, but I'm just projecting that I think he will eventually.
Well, they're going to try.
Yeah.
But, to me, if it's 3rd and 10, who do you want on the field? I don't want him on the field. I don't care. What do I care? I don't care if people think he's a failure. He's 26th of 127 in 2022. That's pretty good as a rookie. Last year was 30th of 130. Pretty good. Like, who gives a shit if people think he's good or he's bad if you're the Philadelphia Eagles? You know, is he helping you win games? He's already helping you win games. Can he get better? Yes. Can he play more? Yes. But if you're asking me, if it's 3rd and 13 and I want my NASCAR package on the field and I want my pass rushers on the field, he's not going to be on the field. But I don't see any problem with that. Others see a problem with that. But they're not thinking about winning football games. They're thinking about stats or fantasy football or whatever. I don't know what they're thinking about. But if you have Bryce Hupp is supposed to be out there. Josh Sweat is supposed to be out there. Jalen Carter is supposed to be out. That's the 3 guys are supposed to be out there. And then who do you want that second interior player to be? You have Milton Williams. You can kick Brandon Graham inside. You can go about it a different way. Have a stand-up guy and take one of the edge guys. A lot of teams in the NFL do that now, these days. Why do you want Jordan Davis on the field to make people feel better? Who gives a shit?
I don't give a shit because I know the player has the impact that he has, but JM points out in the chat, nobody cares more about what people think about their draft picks in the Eagles front office. In a way, it feels like he's correct about that. So I get it from that perspective. But I think Jordan Davis is a huge year. You know, SMD Eagles brings up in the chat, the speed is real. Him running down Josh Allen, you know, I'll never forget when that happened and Dan Sileo had somebody on from Buffalo. I forget who it was. It might have been, who was it? Shoot, I'm forgetting. I'm blanking.
Yeah, a bunch of the Buffalo guys were.
They were like the whole sideline was like, that guy is an absolute beast. I mean, just watching him run down 6'5" Josh Allen and just wreck him. I mean, all the way across the field. That's why I'm like, I know
there's
right
more
now
to pass rushing than athleticism.
I know that.
If we're easy, I mean, the best pass rushers they have tremendous technique, tremendous handwork. They have tremendous pass rushing moves. They set people up. You know, there's a crap load of technique involved. Then, he's more athletic than everybody else. And I think I used to have this discussion with Damo. Damo said he could play outside. I'm like, there's no sticking way this guy can play outside just because he.
So why do you say that? Is it because of some of the, you know, the technique and the hand movement and some of that?
I mean, look at Hassan Reddick. Just put on a. People got to see him over the past 2 years. Look at his handwork. Look at his.
Yeah, well, I'm not expecting him to be Hassan Reddick. Let's say just Javon Hargrave or
my point is, you have Bryce Hupp, you have Josh Sweat, and even if you're not high on Nolan Smith and you still have Brandon Graham, who's been doing it for a long time, and even Jalix Hunt and anybody else you want to throw into the mix, whether it's Julian Okwara, who is a good pass rusher in college, or Terrell Lewis, who's amazingly still here, who is a good pass rusher in college. These guys have been doing it for years and years and years and years. Why would you want Jordan Davis playing outside? You're worse. That's what I'm saying. Get better.
I don't want playing outside. I was just thinking more of a D tackle in the 4-man front. That can.
Well, and then it becomes pressure. Look, if it's 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6, and you got to guard against both aspects of the offensive game, they could run it, maybe, probably not, but still. Versus 3rd and 13, I'm saying 3rd and 13, you want your best pass rushers on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. 3rd and 13 for sure.
He's not, and I don't have a problem with him not being on the field 3rd, 13. Some people do. And by the way, to the commenter, if the Eagles are worried about stuff like that, shame on the Eagles. I don't believe they are. I think they know Jordan's a very good player. I think they're happy with Jordan. I think the one thing they want is the one thing everybody wants, and that's for him to have better conditioning to play more, because they want him to play more, and they want him on the field more because he's a good player, and he needs that. Part's a legitimate criticism. The fact that he's not going to be on the field on 3rd and long, I don't think they give a rat's ass about that, nor should they. And if they
I hope
do,
not,
there's
but I think
something
they
wrong
have
with
shown.
them.
I hope you're right, but to be honest, part of me doesn't think that you are right. I think they do care, maybe more than they should care, and I know because they care about what we say on our YouTube channel. They care about all sorts of stuff, and I get it. That's the PR department's job, but I think the people care. So take it for what you will. Maybe it's not as much as we're making it out to be, but I do think they care. Let's move on. Johnny Mac, defensive end, the new guy, Bryce Huff. What's your expectation for him coming into the year? I think he could have a breakout season playing with a great defensive line here. I know he had a good one in New York, but he didn't really have a chance to be that full-time guy. He's going to get that chance here in Philadelphia. What do you think Bryce Huff does in this defense?
Yeah, I'm a big Bryce Huff guy. So for those people that think I'm always negative, get ready, because I think they hit a home run with Bryce Huff. And it's all projection. He, played on a very good team. That's part of it. He was a one-trick pony, played 480 snaps. There's a big difference. Now he's going to be asked to play over 800. He's going to be asked to set the edge and run defense at times, which has not been a strength because he was never asked to do it. He's going to be asked to drop as a hook and a flat defender in Vic Fangio's scheme. He's never been asked to do it. So there's a lot of projection. But just as far as the pass rusher, last year, I think people know he led the entire NFL according to next gen stats in pressure percentage. He also led the NFL in pressure percentage in 2022. He's done it for 2 consecutive years. Now, again, limited snaps. There's a big difference, but if he carries it, he was at 25% in 2022 generating pressure. These are absurd numbers. He was at 22% last year. If he can keep numbers over 20% with those additional snaps, he's going to be one of the best pass rushers in football. He's never going to be the greatest run defender. Guess what? Either was Hassan Reddick. Nobody's going to give a crap. You live with it. I think the Eagles got a really good player. I think this was the most Eagles-y move of the offseason, and I think they're going to get it right with Bryce Huff.
Numbers are great. It was a limited role, obviously, and he was playing on a really stacked defensive line. So we'll see how it does project here in Philly. But I do like Johnny Mac's optimism on Bryce Huff. I hope he's a great player. Is the pressure thing the thing you and Jody Mack used to debate about? Yeah. He wants sacks, doesn't care about pressures. I'm not going to go into it because Jody's not here to defend his stance. But
and by the way, Bryce got sacks too. So he got 10 sacks and 480 snaps.
Impact the game. I mean, pressures obviously impact the game. Just as Jalen Hurts, just as any quarterback in the league who has to throw the ball when they have pressure in their face. Obviously,
but you have the best of both worlds for Bryce Huff. He had 10 sacks and 480 snaps. He had double digits and 480 snaps. So it's not like he wasn't getting sacks with the pressures.
Right.
What the pressures indicate is the consistency. Sometimes you might get pressure in a quarterback.
You don't get home, right?
Yeah. Sometimes the other guy doesn't do his job and you don't get home. So that's the point. And look, Chris Long often explains, show me the sack. As an edge rusher, Chris Long would say, yeah, sometimes I did it. Sometimes Fletcher collapsed the pocket. The guy ran right into me. I got a sack. Oh, whoop-de-doo. But Bryce Huff gets consistent pressure, and he's been a finisher as well, which I would always tell Jody, finishing is a trait because, Brandon Graham was in his younger days was a big pressure guy, but not the best finisher. He finished in the Super Bowl. That worked out.
I'll set the over-under for Bryce Huff at 14.5 sacks. Johnny Mac, you going over or under?
Over.
Wow. That would be
I'm I'm assuming health, obviously, with all
Yeah,
these
yeah,
guys.
all these
But I
projections are
said
assuming health.
15 when I was talking about him recently. That's what I expect. So that was a good number, good placement.
15 plus sacks from Bryce Huff would be tremendous. I want to skip. We only have 6 minutes left to play here, so I'm going to skip Josh Sweat. Sorry, Josh, I love you, but there's just a guy I want to talk to Johnny Mack about. We'll get to Josh if we have time. Nolan Smith, Johnny Mack, coming in now, second year, going to be a second-year player. He was a first-round draft pick, obviously. Got a little overshadowed because they took Jalen Carter at 9 overall, and then he fell to the bottom of the first round. Eagles picked him with their second first-round pick. What's the projection for Nolan Smith coming into the year? Does he have an impact? Does he finally show that he does have at least something to give to the team? What do you think from Nolan Smith?
Yeah, I so much of it with Nolan will depend on health, and he had the shoulder procedure, and hopefully he's healthier. If he's healthy, he's going to be part of the rotation, probably the fourth part of man on the rotation. So it's obviously a work in progress. But when I talk about those NASCAR packages, if I could envision the Eagles using him as a stand-up rusher inside. So then you have Carter, Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat on the field at the same time. That's what I'm talking about. Vic will do stuff like that. And to get the most potential pass rushers on the field in obvious passing situations. Again, 3rd and 13. Not talking 3rd and 5. You're going to have a real defensive tackle on the field, but there's a lot of ways you can go. He's going to be part of the rotation. Probably if he's healthy, 400 or 500 snaps. And if that's the case, that's where Bryce Huff was. I'm not expecting with the Jets, I'm not expecting 10 sacks like Bryce got, but if you're at 4 or 5, I think that's a good step forward for Nolan Smith, to the point people will stop calling him a bust after one season, which is kind of ridiculous, especially when he's hurt. And by the way, he played through the injury too.
Well, it's also especially when we're celebrating a guy in Brandon Graham who started his career very slow. But that's part of the modern world, Johnny Mack. Even quarterbacks. I mean, it's like you got to perform. Bryce Young. I mean, I'm not a huge Bryce Young guy, but 1 year it's like, oh, he's a tremendous bust. I mean, that's just the nature of the modern world now, man. The expectations are high and they're quick and they're fast and furious, and you got to perform.
Yeah, you would think people would learn from Brandon, but yeah, they don't. I mean, yeah, it's what have you done for me? Do something right now. You're a first round pick. I get it, but it's not fair. I'm not going to say it's fair.
Well, I do think there is an element of, if you are a first round pick, the expectation is higher and you should know that. I'm not saying it's right, but it's inevitable and it's the reality.
Yeah, but I think first round picks don't go in there and saying, "Oh, I'm a first round pick. I better show that I'm a first round pick." I mean, to them,
you
they're
better
just
show you
trying
can
to
play in the NFL, or better at least show that you have the talent, in there. And I don't think Nolan showed that at all. I know it was marred by injury, but still.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, he wasn't healthy. He played through it. It's interesting. If he didn't play through it, he'd probably be in a better position, which is weird and counterintuitive as well. In other words, if he would have said, "You know what, I can't go. My shoulder, playing with this harness, and he had to sit for the season," people would be disappointed. They might call him injury prone, but they wouldn't have labeled him a bust. The fact that he played through it, he played in every game. Now, granted, he was playing on mainly special teams, but he fought through it. And in theory, that should be a feather in his cap, and it is with the organization. But I always bring up the Nate Gary story. People hated Nate Gary, and he wasn't a good player. I never say that, but the coaching staff loved Nate Gary, and I'm like, why does this coaching staff love Nate Gary? I tell this story all the time. Not very good, let's be honest, but typical. The Eagles had nothing at linebacker because they're drafting Nebraska safeties in the 5th round to be linebackers. Nate Gary. They had nobody at linebacker. He played the whole season through a sports hernia, and Jim Schwartz and Ken Plajol, who was the linebackers coach at the time, had tremendous respect for him because he did that. And he was their best option. So they loved him for it. And there's always things like that maybe fans don't realize.
Johnny Mac, 4 to 5 is a little low for me. I'm going to set the over-under for Nolan Smith at 5.5 sacks. You going over or under?
Well, I'm going under. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot for.
I'm hoping to get at least 6 out of him. I think he's going to have I think he's going to have a bigger role than people think. And I think they're going to rotate Josh Sweat out a little bit more for him to try and get him on the field more. Maybe not, but that's what I think they're going to do because I don't know how much.
I'm amazed at the hits Josh Sweat has taken.
Oh, just from the business perspective, forget football for a second. I don't think they see Josh Sweat in their plans beyond this year.
Well, that's probably true as they rework the deal. But, again, I think people need to separate a little bit from the business plan and the coaching staff. Like the coaching staff's going to play the guys that can help them win games.
Yeah, that's what I like about Vic Fangio. I think he's going to no matter what.
He is.
Yeah.
And Nick is as well.
Well, as you pointed out, Nick's playing a different game. There is politics involved, and Nick is.
Well, there is politics, but he's never when the games start, he's not going to play people to acquiesce. Howie Roseman. He doesn't even report to Howie Roseman, as I said. He's going to try to win games at all costs. And yeah, I mean, Josh is just better than Nolan. I mean, Josh is a good player. He had a bad end of last season. I think the Eagles were a little upset at the freelancing. I know. Everybody was doing it. He took some hits from that standpoint, but he's a good player. And he's still young enough to where, I find it very hard to believe that Vic Fangio is going to show up and say, oh, we got to get Nolan Smith on the field and Josh Sweat off it. I could be wrong, but
yeah,
that would need massive improvement from Nolan Smith.
We'll continue talking about each defensive player a little bit tomorrow. We're out of time here, but I will say just real quick on Josh Sweat. To me, I don't know why I feel like this. Maybe I'm wrong. I know you like the player. It just feels like he should be better than he is. I don't know what it is. Like he has this the perfect prototype build.
Like yeah, I said first time I met him, I said, "Oh, that's an edge
I remember hearing you say that. Like if you built an edge rusher on a computer, like you would build Josh Sweat in terms of the size and the athleticism and the bend and all those things. And I just don't feel he's ever lived up to it. I hope he has a big year. He's been very
his story for people that don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, he was
injury.
The number one, literally, going into college high school prospect in the country. And he had a horrible, almost lost his leg, catastrophic leg injury. So when he was drafted, and really there was a lot of concerns about his leg, and the Eagles had him on a pitch count early. Was a 4th round pick, no injury. He's probably an All-American. He's probably a top 10 pick and all that kind of stuff. Really, they only ditched the pitch count, so to speak, last year. That's the first time they did it because of his leg. And, maybe he needs to play a little bit less. So that could factor into your Nolan Smith thing. But that to me is more of a medical thing than a performance thing. And he lived up to it in 2022. He had 11 sacks. He was a big time player. And that's, I'll look him up real quick. He was 12th of 119.
Wow, that's high.
Entire
That's
league.
good, man.
He didn't play nearly to that level last year, but in 2021 he was 21 of 110. He's a really good player.
Maybe Vic can get it back out of him. I think That's a good point. It's good context there from Johnny Mac. Maybe I'm overreacting to my thoughts on Josh Sweat. Maybe he can have a big year for us because that would help. I mean, if we have him have a big year and Bryce Huff could be the player we're thinking he might be, especially based on what you said, Johnny Mac, that could be a good pass rush. And then maybe you're right about Nolan. He doesn't even need 6 sacks. You can go and get 4 or 5, show improvement, show the development, and you have time to wait in the wings a little bit and develop his body and get fully healthy. Could be good, but good stuff today, Johnny Mac. I thought Bill Colarulo was great. We had good linebacker talk. We had good defensive talk. Heavy defense today. We talked a little bit about the Cowboys' problems in the open. For any Eagle fan interested in that, you should go and check out that segment. Johnny Mac brought good context to the Cowboys' problem. But if you guys are in there, 65 likes right now, everybody. Let's get those likes up. I'd like to try and get to closer to 167 likes. So if you are watching, we appreciate all of you. Like the show on your way out. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. Just one more show left on the week. July 4th is on Thursday, so we'll have off Thursday and Friday this week. I hope everybody has a great 4th of July. Just one more show left this week, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, big Wednesday, final day of the week, holiday week. So everybody get excited. One more to go. Let's do it.
One more to go. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Hit the like button on your way out. Appreciate all of you guys more than you know. Real quick before I check out, I want to thank James Carver again. I know he's still in here. I think he's still in here. If he's not, I'm sorry, but I mean, what a day yesterday from him. He gifted 120 JAKIB memberships on our YouTube channel. So James, thank you, brother. That is deserving of a JAKIB care package. And I spoke to the big man last night. I said, Krause, I don't think James Carver is in Philadelphia, but we got to send him to a game. I think he's close to Dallas. I'd like to send him to Eagles Dallas in Dallas next year. James Carver, that's my offer to you, friend. If you're out there and you're willing to accept and you're willing to go, and if you can't do that, shit, I'll send you to another game. But Eagles Dallas in Dallas in Jerry's world, that's what I want to do for James Carver for all the support he's been giving the channel. We appreciate you so much, brother. I know you're saying no, but we are doing it. I'm going to get your address out of you, and I'm going to send you the care package. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, brother?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See you, everybody. Thank you.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.